Go. Welcome to the PRCA Fuse Podcast. Now, reading the room for brands that are rooted in culture is really hard. We've had plenty of brands who've got this wrong. Most recently, Sky with its female-focused TikTok channel Halo, which was pulled just days after it launched, after it was called sexist. We are joined today by someone who gets this right. His name is Gerald Sagoe. He's a director and creative director who specialises in creating content rooted in cultural authenticity. He set up his own agency, So Fresh, and has worked in markets such as West Africa and set up an agency in Dubai. In this podcast, we talk about brands that play in culture, who've got it wrong and who's got it right and how they've got it right. We talk about the rise of personal branding, and we talk about the impact of storytelling. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Gerald.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Adrian.
You're very welcome. Now, for our listeners, would you mind just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I wear many hats. I am a writer, director, producer, creative director, and I work in content and creative social media strategy. So I'm either ideating content for brands or individuals and executing the strategy, or working within kind of social media content development. So I work across cross-functional between creative ideation and executing content. And I'm a bit of a film buff as well, so filmmaking is my thing as well.
Brilliant. And you have been doing some pretty high-profile work, I see. So I had a look at your work. You've worked with people like Anthony Joshua, Lethal Bizzle, the Mayor of London, producing a lot of content for Sky. And the running theme I see in your content is that a lot of it is rooted in cultural authenticity. For our listeners, what is cultural authenticity? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I feel like, I would say cultural authenticity is being rooted in what is true with culture. I feel when you look at different brands or commercials or content, whether you're selling a product or selling a service, there needs to be some truth to that. And we need to kind of believe who is saying it and it's coming from a true source. So, for example, I'm not a sneakerhead, so I wouldn't be the right person to come and start talking about sneaker culture with you right now. Even though I might be aware of it, I couldn't tell you so many things where one of my friends who's a proper sneakerhead would be much better placed to talk to you about that. There's so much nuance within it, historic context and so on. So I'll say with culture, just about authenticity and who speaks to that.
Because some brands can get it really wrong. Like it can feel a little bit like dad dancing. When you see some brands, for example, just jumping on some meme or some trend, and it's like, it's horrible. Could you tell us a little bit about why it's important? Well, why don't you tell us about some brands who've got it wrong? In your view, are there any examples of brands that have just tried to hit the mark but have really missed? And what do they do wrong? How did audiences react? Spill.
Yeah, sure. So I would say there's a few. The ones I'm aware of, for example, obviously working closely with Sky and at Sky. More recently, they done a new TikTok page aimed at women called Halo. And unfortunately, that really had a bad reaction from the audience. It was meant to be about football culture, and growing this audience, which is, young women. But the reactions weren't positive. And that could be a number of reasons, but essentially the audience felt like it wasn't authentic and they were also being patronized. So it kind of tells you that they missed the mark, and that could be a number of reasons. That could be the people behind the scenes who, with the best intentions, didn't understand football culture and how to speak to actual football fans. So that's an example. And sometimes it's also just, I guess, brands who culturally try to shoehorn themselves into something. I got a brief from Jack Wills to direct a commercial some time ago, and I looked at their branding and it's almost like they're shifting from that, preppy British university culture to let's now try and be cool and street culture and within that kind of area capacity. So sometimes it's a case of brands trying to kind of shift with the times, and they might get it wrong as well.
Did you take that Jack Wills job on?
I didn't take it on, no, but it was an interesting brief nonetheless. And I think I saw the end result of it, and I didn't think much of it. I'm not sure whether that their content is translating right now, but it's interesting to see brands like that kind of shift. But you do see some of them where it can work. I think if they do it properly and kind of bring in cultural voices and and do it right. I think it's always hard if your foundations wasn't within that.
Yeah.
Someone like Adidas, their foundations has always been kind of cultural. If you take back in the day when they saw that hip hop was kind of adopting their brand and they put themselves next to it, so it becomes organic. Whereas some brands, it doesn't look organic.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we often talk about brands having a right to play in a certain area. And Adidas, like you said, brilliant. It might be a German brand, but actually the hip hop community in the 80s, particularly in New York, adopted it. And it's always had this great association with supporting grassroots basketball as well. So great. Jack Wills, I'm not sure where their receipts are, right? When you're looking at this, so when you're looking at these briefs that come into you, and clearly you're a man in demand, are there any telltale signs that you look at and you think, I'm not sure if this is going to work? Or even when you look at work, that's when you say, for example, you look at work from other people and they've tried to do something around cultural authenticity and it's not landed. What are the telltale signs that this hasn't worked?
Telltale signs. I mean, nowadays you get responses straight away from the audiences, right? You get that response through comments and engagement. If the audience is telling you this is off, like straight away you'll be seeing the comments are like, no, this is terrible, or just the engagement is not there. Nowadays everything's so visible that you're going to get the feedback straight away. The last commercial I directed for GDK, within a minute of that commercial dropping on social, you're getting the feedback live. You're getting people saying, "Oh, this is sick. This is, this is. I'm sharing this," or commenting like, different kind of positive comments, or putting themselves within that conversation to say something. So you can see that feedback straight away. Sometimes it might be that you might get silence, so that's telling you something as well. And then obviously on the flip side, you're getting people being very negative and saying how they feel, angry, sickened, like saying it. So you're seeing the feedback live across social platforms. So I think that tells you everything you need to know.
And as someone responsible for that content, is there a moment where you're about to press, go live or post on that and your heart's in your mouth a little bit and you're thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen here? Or do you have a good idea about how the audiences are going to react?
Personally, for me, with the stuff that I do and I own, I guess I have a good feeling about it. I wouldn't be confident in signing something off or allowing whoever else to sign something off if I didn't feel proud of it, if I didn't feel like, oh no, I like the result of this. So sometimes it just might be the platform that it's not the right platform, and it might not get the engagement that way. But I've never kind of thought to myself, I shouldn't put this out because it's going to have an adverse reaction. I've maybe noticed certain things and have noted that if there's a stakeholder involved, to make them aware of stuff. And yeah, I think it's always good to have people in the room who have different perspectives. Again, where I come from a background of actual production and executing production, a lot of the times I'm in rooms where people come from different kind of backgrounds, and they might not understand certain things, where I would bring in my technical expertise, and and same way with cultural expertise as well.
Yeah. So how do brands get it right then? So is it about having the right people in the room? To talk us through what processes can brands put in place to make sure that they're hitting the nail on the head?
Yeah, there's a mix of both. I feel like, again, coming from an authentic place, a great example is Oatly and Gigs, the rapper Gigs. They done a great collaboration in 2024, and Gigs reached out to Oatly and just off the cuff kind of message saying, "This product has changed me and my son's life. They're lactose intolerant," and just the fact that that's an authentic conversation, and Oatly kind of leaned into it. And it ended up becoming a partnership where they've done a whole commercial and a whole activation around Gigs and Oatly custard. So that's a great example of it coming from an authentic place and then not just being shoehorned, right? And that actual campaign, done really well. I think it was the best performing Instagram content for them. On TikTok, it outperformed in terms of like the comments. It got like over 15% positive comment rate compared to their usual kind of 7%. And it generated like so many different pieces of coverage. So yeah, that's an example of a great kind of, example of how brands do it right when it's authentic. And yeah, you can set up systems. You can make sure that if you are doing campaigns, or if you are starting a year strategy around whatever you're doing, that there is you kind of set up with the right people in the room. If you're not experts in a specific subject or in a specific area, you bring the right people involved to kind of talk about the development and the process. If you're looking to kind of borrow from certain cultures, again, what partners can you bring on board? Whether that's a PR company, an emerging kind of brand or agency, and yeah, just collaborate and bring the right people together to do it collaboratively.
It feels like the common theme with all of this is just to listen, right? So Oatly as a brand was listening to its audience. It saw the comment from Gigs, lent into that. You're talking about having the right people collaborating together. It's about listening, being open to ideas, and making sure you're taking that feedback on board really before you go into any shooting, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's just being about being close to the culture, being close to the people in the know. So yeah, listening, and taking those learnings. I was out in Dubai in 2018, working for as part of like setting up a startup agency over there, and I was immersed in the culture in terms of understanding. I'm in a new place, right, and I'm gonna have to learn how this culture operates. So talking to people, going to the festivals over there, the clubs, and so on. So I'm learning live. I'm listening. I'm understanding the culture from an authentic place, rather than like, I don't know, maybe where brands get it wrong is that they just do what they've always done, rather than, because especially if I'm doing something in a different market, I need to understand that market, and those cultural nuances.
And so, in that example, when you were out in Dubai, what surprised you most about the culture there when you were immersing yourself there?
What surprised me most? Well, I guess maybe not surprised, but you just learn different things, right? You learn how um, the demographics shape things over there. The youth culture. What's the music that's kind of popular right now? What's the vibe of what people are reacting to? What's trending? Um, what kind of cultural or slang exists, that it would be different somewhere else. What stories are people talking about? Like, there's so many different things, right, that kind of allow you to understand, oh, this place operates like this, and this is what people respond to. And that comes from different places, how family structures are, how young people, again, like react to whether it's music or sport. Yeah, and there's so many kind of, I guess, cultural convergence within that. We've done work within event spaces, like a launch for John Varvatos when they launched out in Dubai. There's also, I guess, I actually shot a music video while I was out there as well. And from living there for a bit, I knew where to kind of shoot and how to tell the story about Dubai from experience in Dubai. So yeah, I think it's just being on the ground, listening. If you can't be there, talk to the right people.
I love that. I love that. And so far we've been talking a lot about the content you've created for brands or for clients, and I think what I've seen in the last year is a bit of a shift, particularly in corporate communications, where it's no longer the brands who are talking, but the employees who are talking on behalf of the brands. And some people call it like the employee influencer, the employee creator. You've been working in this area a bit, and tell us about what you're seeing here. Have you seen an increased demand here? Are there specific sectors where this is growing faster than others? I'd love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, I feel like we are in this kind of cultural shift of self-branding, and people having a voice. Nowadays you go on your phone and you're on social media, you're going to see someone talking to the camera and talking like they're talking directly at you, right? There's this kind of shift in terms of everyone being personable, and we as a society kind of reacting more to that than traditional selling. That's why influencer marketing has boomed and has continued to boom and grow. So I think with people being at the forefront for brands or self-branding is only going to continue to shift the culture and keep on growing. I done some work for FRP, who are a business advisory firm, and they had a partner there, Luke, who was leading a podcast. So I came to help them set that up and create content across platforms for them. And his whole story was about mental health. He had a story where it was real true to him and his challenges, and everyone goes through challenges, right? But it's only now that mental health has become a thing that people don't, maybe are offended by or act funny about or want to kind of disregard. It's at the forefront, and we're happy to talk about it as a culture. So for him to now be like, you know what, I'm happy to put myself at the forefront of this conversation and bring people and invite them to a podcast to talk about mental health and how that affects your work and personal life, and the brand champion him and championing that, that's amazing. And that's an example of where things are going.
Oh, brilliant. So is it more these kind of advisory firms that you're seeing a growth in? I guess because there is very much about personal one-to-one relationships and expertise. Is that, are we seeing those types of businesses are the ones that are creating more demand for personal branding? Or because, when I scroll through, for example, my Instagram, I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to interiors, and I get lots of people trying to sell houses and doing house tours and that type of thing. And I guess that's also another high value purchase. But is it more these types of businesses?
Yeah, I feel like it's different types of sectors, to be honest. So I wouldn't say there's any specific industry, because I feel like any brand or any company industry can champion their people, and people are self-branding. And I think the businesses that make sense or there's an alignment will champion their people. So I think it's across sectors that I've seen. Yeah. So for example, I've seen people in maybe go on events and speak on behalf of their brands, you know. So that's an example. You go to like business seminars or different types of seminars in specific industries and PR and so on, and you've got different people representing those brands. So I think that's an example there.
Okay, great. And what about the impact this has for the individual and the employee? So clearly, as a result of, for example, a podcast that you produce, the employee's profile grows,
Mm-hmm.
but it grows in a very specific place because you're talking about him creating a podcast about mental health, whereas the business is business advisory. Is there a halo effect for the business? How does it work?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's like, it's humanizing the company. This whole idea of people buy into people, and now we are at the intersection of conversation and kind of this kind of cultural element where people will buy into that, and I believe that creates an opportunity for visibility, and for another entry point where other people will be like, oh, I'm now aware of this brand through this means, So there's a way of discovering the brand and the culture and the people as well. So I think it does create a halo effect.
So kind of awareness and trust as well.
Yeah.
And so the in the example you mentioned, who's paying for this? Because is it the employee themselves who are making an investment into getting you down to do all of this stuff, or is it the employer? And if it's the latter, how do we make a business case for investing into this kind of stuff?
Yeah, good point. I feel it's both.
Oh, right,
You
yeah.
kind of want to invest in yourself regardless, or that comes to like even whatever sector you're in. If you want to grow, you invest in yourself. So against self-branding, you can invest in yourself, but then the company can also decide to invest in, like, for example, the podcast. Let's actually create the podcast and support this and understand the bigger vision around this. So I think it goes hand in hand. It's a bit of both. I guess depending on the scenario, one part is doing more heavy lifting than others. But I think it goes in both ways. I would like to think that if I was working at a company and they saw that, hey, Gerald's a great speaker, let's utilize his talents, and then we partner up and do this. I've worked at a company where we made some of the talent influencers, and we would allow them to interview guests, and also let's go out and do street interviews. But rather than going to hire an influencer who's going to cost crazy money, let's just use our people, because they're here, they understand the company, and then again, creating that halo effect. People know that this person works here. There's trust and familiarity.
I love that, and I really feel like the companies that are at the forefront of creating trust are those that are showcasing their employees, not just for leadership,
Mhm.
but for people who work there day in day out, putting a graft in and showing up. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's great. When you're looking at all of this kind of content, are there particular companies that you think are doing this really, really well? I mean, of course, your work, obviously,
Yeah.
but apart from that,
Yeah. As in specifically using their people as.
yeah, using employees and employees creating content on their behalf.
Um, I think some of the I guess cultural brands that I'm aware of. There's like football brands, a lot of them that do it well. Brands like Versus, which I kind of follow. Uh, there's a lot of brands that kind of just let their people be at the forefront of it. Brands like use presenters, people who write articles, to even more traditional brands where you see, I guess, the journey. I mean, I watch CNN, for example, and they do a lot of content around, Africa, where I'm interested in, and I see like them leaning into their hosts. And yeah, so there's quite a few examples of like different brands and corporations that kind of, like do it well.
Great. And if someone wanted to start off on this journey and they're thinking, I've just heard Gerald on the PRCA Fuse podcast, so I'd love to explore this. Where can people go to find out more about you and your work?
Yeah, sure. So I am on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Gerald Sagoe. Sagoe is spelled Sagoe, and it's Gerald with a G. Check out my website, which is geraldsagoe.com. So yeah, I'll be there.
Brilliant. And I would encourage listeners to go and check out that website. There's some wonderful pieces of work there, including, and I don't think Joe's really talked about this, but some of his documentary work, which is absolutely brilliant. So
Thank you so much. I literally was pitching a new documentary right now, and yeah, I do like documentaries. I like the idea of kind of investigating topics and getting, exploring, traveling, exploring, and bringing those two things together. So yeah, and I'm also looking at narrative as well, narrative film as well. So I feel like storytelling, whether it's working with individuals or working with brands, I love the concept of storytelling. And I feel as we move, especially in this advertising space where people are maybe put off from traditional advertising, storytelling is going to become more important. So maybe, who knows, a brand might sponsor my next film. So
yeah, I think you might have Sarah Waddington, the CEO of PRCA, also knocking on the door. She's a big advocate for storytelling and it belonging in the earned media space.
looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Adrian.
Cheers.